Today we are going to basically start off, as an officially the working and the basics of the Fortigate Firewall. Okay. Now over here, what we will be discussing is the high level overview. Okay. What does firewall is all about and everything about the firewall. Okay. Give me one quick second. Okay. Okay, so we are going to start off with the high level overview, and we are going to basically talk about the platform, as in, the what is the hardware architecture of the FortiGate firewall, because a lot of people do talk about, what's the architecture looks like and how is it built, and around 40 to 50% in the interview as well. Sometimes people do ask that. So if anybody is basically looking for an L2 role or an L3 role, right, like an expert in one of the fields, then over there this question does is asked. Okay, so identify the features of FortiGate in a virtuous network and understand FortiGate security processing unit, SPU. Okay, so that's very important. The SPUs is basically group of hardware chips, which makes the FortiGate firewall performance, quite good, and the performance, and because at end of the day, all the traffic is being handled by your CPU, right? But when it comes to the FortiGate, the way it is designed, the way the SPUs are designed, is that even once the traffic hits your FortiGate firewall, it goes through your CPU, and then the CPU goes and um, over just share this load to the rest of the hardware chips. Now, what are those chips and how do they work? Let's talk about that as well. Okay. All right. Okay, so the first thing is the modern context of the network security. So when I say modern context, right, there was a time where the FortiGate, or as in not even the FortiGate, there was a time when whenever we wanted to talk about, network security, it was all about edge, a firewall which is maybe installed at the edge, okay, and all the, security features was implemented over there. All right, and if in case we wanted to make any changes, that was to be done at the edge level. Okay, so let's say for example this is your LAN. Okay, all the traffic will be going through, let's say, a router, and then you have a firewall over here. This firewall is basically connected with the ISP. Okay, so all the security profiles that you can think of, right, those security profiles were all implemented over here. Okay, so everything, anything that you wanted to change, it has to be done over here. Okay, it was understood that whatever is over here, this section, this is trusted. Okay, blindly it was trusted. That is where people, or I would say potential hackers, started to look upon that, okay, this is the place where you can exploit, because if you get into over here, then it doesn't matter if wherever the firewall is implemented, it doesn't matter, right? But that was traditional. The modern context of security has changed a lot. It doesn't really matter nowadays that are you a part of the LAN segment or are you a part of a DMZ segment. The amount of security implementations or the scanning which will be done is on a very similar patterns, right? So it's like a zero trust based game, right? So if you look into over here as well, this line says today's firewalls are designed in response to multifaceted and multi-device environments with no identifiable parameters. Absolutely, because it is so complex and it is becoming like a mesh environment where everybody is connected to everybody in some way or the other. Right? So it is very difficult to understand from where a potential threat could basically come. Right? So that is why the complexity is increasing, and the amount of security that needs to be implemented has also to be increased, right? So, mobile workforce, partners accessing your network services, public and private clouds, and IoT, Internet of Things, bring your own device, right? These are a part of our daily job right now. Maybe 10 years back, it was still as at a position where it was like, only a couple of companies was doing it, or maybe companies who have a lot of um, a lot of if the cost was not really a problem, those companies would go, the top 100 companies or the top 50 companies, right? But now it's this is like for everyone, It's like basic necessity for all the companies out there, right? So that's why the amount of complexity in a network has increased a lot, and that is why the demand of network security has increased a lot as well. People who are people who knows how to work on a firewall, not just that, people who knows how to design the firewall, how to look for an issue, how to identify an issue, figure out the problem and fix it permanently. That's what people are looking for in the interviews as well. So that is what the modern context is all about. Now, if you look over here, it says the firewalls are expected to perform different functions within a network. Absolutely. Different deployment modes, distribution enterprise, next generation, internal segmentation, data center, right? So basically, you call this as NGFW, this is ISFW, and this is DCFW. Okay, so these are acronyms, but point over here is that firewall is still the same, but they are doing multiple functions at multiple locations. So if you have a different, so just to give you an example, it's just a one liner. We can discuss this maybe in the question and answer round, or maybe in the coming classes. So just a one liner. Next generation firewall is basically a firewall which functions on application control. Okay, we are going to discuss this anyway. So application control and IPS. Okay, that's the NGFW. So this is like, so what I'm talking is basically something which is mandatory, not optional. Okay, then you have ISFW, internal segmentation. Okay, so here you can work with the web filters, the DNS filters, the antiviruses and all that stuff. Okay, so that is ISFW. Then you have the DCFW, which is the data center. Again, this works basically, sorry, so this works basically on the IPS section. Okay, because that is what the data center is all about. So if you have a DC farm, you need to have an IPS. I mean, that's it maybe a couple of years back we could think, let's implement a IPS or an IDS, but now it's like mandatory, right? You need to have an IPS. You need to know that what kind of traffic is coming to your data center, right? So, and with the ISFW, which is internal segmentation, whatever traffic which is going out, if it is a user traffic, you have to apply a web filter. You need to know what kind of um, uh, websites or categories he is basically going for, what kind of traffic or what kind of website he's going to, what kind of production environment, what is the top level of websites which is being accessed. So web filtering, DNS filtering, antiviruses, to block the malicious content, they are part of ISFW, right? NGFW is all about application control, application sensitive traffic, right? So if you have custom applications, or let's say your servers have custom applications which require, which basically want, where you want that only, let's say, updated Adobe readers would be able to log in, only updated web browser should be able to log in. So those are the places where application control comes in, right? We'll anyway talk about all these things individually in the coming classes, but then just to give you a one liner or a two liner of what exactly the next generation firewall ISFW and DCFW is, and what other different design scenarios they can be a part of. Okay, so sorry, every firewall has a different design scenario. Okay, whether it is NGFW, ISFW, or DCFW. We can talk about this maybe in the Q&A round. Okay. Then you have the DNS, DHCP, web filter, IPS, and so on. So basically, these are the functionalities which is being implemented today, and it's like a basic necessity. Okay, every traffic which is going out, or which is maybe accessing some critical traffic, or sorry, critical resource, it has to be applied. Okay, so that's why when I say modern context of network security, it's very complex. Okay, all right, so let's move ahead. Right, architecture design, very important. See over here, what is the role of your FortiGate firewall is that over here, see this is basically hardware. Okay, let me give you an analogy. So you have a Windows, sorry, let's say you have a laptop, right? Now laptop is a hardware. right? Whatever your CPU and memory is, let's say RAM, that's hardware for you, right? On top of this, you have an operating system, let's say Windows, all right? And on top of this Windows, you have applications, such as Office, um, Notepad, right? So, I mean, there are so many out there. What I had just on the top of my mind. Point over here is that you have hardware, then you have the software, and then you have the features. Same goes to every firewall out there in the world. Okay, that whenever you are comparing, you would basically see there is a hardware out there. Okay, so in our case, SPUs or the security processing units is basically the one which you call as hardware. Okay, now on top of that, you have the operating system FortiOS, which is your software. All right, and then you have the antivirus and the web filter and the IPS, which is basically your features, right? So, but then FortiGate, you will call this as UTM, Unified Threat Management, right? So this is what we are talking about. That whenever we are talking about the architecture, this is what it basically means, that you have something which makes you different from the other vendors out there, right? So the security processing unit, this is what makes a FortiGate different from the other vendors out there. Then you have the FortiOS, which is again, it's an operating system, all right, vendor specific. And then you have these things. So UTM is one thing which is similar to all the firewalls out there. The only thing which is different is the way you configure them. That is it. Okay. So now the security processing unit is basically those chips, okay, which is dedicatedly defined or dedicatedly configured to handle your traffic. Okay, so so most FortiGate models have one or more specialized circuits, and you call them as ASIC or Forti ASIC. Okay, so you have something which is called as let's say, oops, okay, I don't know how does that happen. So something as CP, then you have something which is SP, then you have something which is NP. So content processor, security processor, network processor, right? So those are the hardware chips. Okay. Now these hardware chips are, we are basically, these hardware chips are the one which we are, having on the device itself, and these are used for making sure the traffic is being handled correctly and in the and most fastestly, basically the fast part, that is what you can talk. Okay, and you guys give me 1 minute, hold on. Okay, sorry, I was getting a call. Okay, so now again, so hardware chips, we are going to talk about this in the next slide. And then we have the FortiOS. Now the FortiOS is basically, we are as of now working with 7.0. So 7.0 is the one which is stable enough. I think last week the Fortinet released 7.2, which is having bundles of new features. And I was going through the feature guide, and I was really impressed about the new features. I'm so excited. I was thinking to maybe integrate that in the course itself, so that you guys can also know what is the latest coming up in the 7.2, and you will get trained on 7.2. So maybe by 2 months you can go ahead and shout, I am trained on 7.2. So people or any company who out there who are looking for for 7.2 or FortiGate firewall on the latest software, you would be the first people who will be working on that. So I'll see if I can integrate that. So if you guys want, do let me know. So if everyone agrees to it, probably I'll integrate the 7.0 and 7.2, so that you'll be able to understand what are the difference between 7.0 and 7.2, and what are the added features and functionalities of the 7.2 as well, right? So you will be getting trained on the certification. You'll also get to know what is new, right? Okay, and then you get the UTM functionalities, which is antivirus, web filtering, and IPS. You have dedicated classes on these, so we'll not talk in depth about these. but these are basically your functionalities which work on top of your operating system. Just like you have the hardware, on top of the hardware, you have the operating system, which is the FortiOS, right? Now, FortiOS is one thing which is similar, mostly similar on all the devices. Doesn't matter if it's a small device or a high-end device. The only difference would be the number of functionality that that particular device can handle. Obviously, the higher end would be able to handle much more features and functionalities. But the operating system, the way you configure, that basically remains the same. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Okay. See, now we are talking about something which is called as the deployment, deployment of the FortiGate firewall. So you have the FortiGate in the VM category. Okay, over here. So this is what we are even getting trained on as well, that we are using the FortiGate VM. So same features as physical appliance except the SPU. Yes, of course. So because SPU is something which is on a hardware, right? Now you cannot imitate a hardware on the virtual machine, because that is something which is you cannot imitate a hardware chip on a virtual machine, right? So again, the implementations, the functionalities, features, everything exactly remains the same. The only thing different with the VM is that you will not have the SPUs. Okay. Now you have something which is VMX, which is a subset of features for the VMware and the FortiGate firewall. This was made for if you have VMware set up in your environment, then probably you will be going with the VMX as compared to VM. Okay. Then you have the FortiGate connector for Cisco ACI. That's basically for if you have an implementation where a lot of you have implementation of monitoring devices, and you have Splunk, and you have let's say Citrix and all these kind of devices, then you need an ACI, or basically now we are talking about APIs, where you need to integrate your FortiGate firewall with all those devices, so that you will be able to understand the amount of traffic which is bypassing with the right kind of security, and making sure that all of the devices are integrated with the firewall, a FortiGate firewall, with your APIs in place. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. The SPUs. So SPUs, again, it's hardware acceleration offload. Okay, what I basically mean is, then when I say hardware acceleration offload, in very simplistic terms, this basically means all the traffic which is going to your, oopsie, hold on, all the traffic which is going to your CPU, right? I mean, initially everything will be handled by your CPU, and it will keep on handling the traffic. But with having the SPUs in the picture, what happens is the traffic goes to your CPU, and then from the CPU it goes to the right SPUs. Okay. Now SPU handles all the traffic. So CPU remains free of all kind of traffic, and it is basically ready for anything which is new. Okay. All right. So now you have processors. Now processors are again divided into three categories, which is content processors, security process, and network processors. Okay, we're going to talk about this in the next slide, but you have NP7, NP6 sessions can be viewed by enabling per session accounting. So how to view those? You can go through in the dashboard, and under the dashboard you have the interface monitoring. Under the interface monitoring, you'll be able to know how much of the traffic is being handled by the SVs, okay, and how much traffic is handled by N-Turbo. Again, these are hardware ASIC chips, and it will tell you that how much traffic is being handled over here. So let's, for example, it comes up around 30%. So basically means only 30% of your traffic is being transferred to your SQs, right? So maybe you might need to check whether maybe you made some changes, and that is why it is like that, or what is the cause? Because it should be anything above 70 or 80%. It's supposed to be, but again, it on depends on the what kind of setup that you have. Okay. Okay, now let's talk a little bit deep about the content security network and all these things. See, maybe in the interviews you might be asked about what is CP and NP and all these things. So see, over here, let's talk about the content processor first. Okay, see, when it comes to content processor, it's all about the encryption and decryption. Okay, It's content, right? So all the kind of scanning which happens. So high speed content inspection, okay, not bound to interface. This is very important. See, it is a content processor that is not mapped to an interface. Okay, so it's not like that only when the traffic is hitting some specific interface, it will go to your content processor. No, content processor is a chip which is embedded in the hardware so that all the traffic will go through it. Okay, and it is closer to the application. So what I mean is that whatever the application level traffic is, right? What kind of application we are using, and if you want to allow or block some specific kind of applications, right? So content processor is the one that will be doing the job for you. Okay, any kind of encryption that needs to happen, any kind of decryption that needs to be happen, that will be taken care by your content processor. SSL is one of that. Okay, antivirus again. So to scan the contents, antivirus basically takes help of your content processor, right? So if in case in an interview people ask you about what exactly the content processor does, so maybe you can say that, oh, in the security profiles you have antivirus. Content processor basically is the background or is the backbone of the antivirus, because it scans all the traffic. And it's the one of the most important thing is that it is not based on any interface, so it is interface free, so all the traffic has to go through it. Okay, and okay, now so the next is the security processor. Now in the security processor over here, directly attached to network interfaces, increase the system performance by accelerating the IPs. Okay, see the security processor. So whenever you are going to look into any of the FortiGate firewall, right? So do one thing, whatever model of your FortiGate firewall you have in your, office, just look for the data sheet and see, do they have any security processors or not? What kind of content processor they have? So you might get some CP9 or CP6 or maybe CP10 or whatever it is. You'll get to know. Okay, and you let me know. So I'll probably share some articles that could help you understand more about your current firewall that you have implemented. Okay, so security processor basically is something which is applied on the network interface. Okay, it is directly on the network interface. It basically helps to accelerate the IPS. Okay, so whatever the IPS signatures is, it is going to make sure that the security processor handles that traffic. So what happens is, rather than CPU doing the job for you, security processor is doing that, so it becomes much more faster as compared to CPU. Why? Because CPU has to handle all the other kind of traffic. The new traffic is also coming in, but over here it is dedicated, the security processor. So the way of processing, the amount of processing handled by the security processor, if you compare it to a CPU, is much more faster. Okay. Okay, now next is the network processor. Now, network processor is, again, at the network level, packet processing, NP7 provided by N-Turbo. So we saw that in the last slide, right? Directly attached to network interface. Okay. So now we know when it comes to SP and network processor, these are the two things which is directly connected to your interfaces. Okay, so again, NP7 is one of the example of a network processor. It now, depending on what model that you have, it could be different. Okay, now packet processing. So when I say packet processing, basically it's everything which has to do with layer 3. Okay, how frequently, how quickly you can process the traffic, right? It is being handled by your network processor. Okay, now a question comes up that if there is a traffic which is going out on the internet, can more than one processor can be applied on it? Absolutely, because if the traffic is coming in, it would be, the network processor or the NP7 will do its job. Okay, if you have some kind of scanning into it or some kind of encryption or decryption into it, then content processor will be doing the job. And the next is that security processors will, if you have an IPS implemented, then probably security processor will also be added to it. So one traffic, but three processors are basically doing the job for you. Okay, So Venkat, is it fine now? Are you able to match up, or do you want me to slow down a little bit more? I understand that these are a couple of things which is very theoretical and very new. All these kind of processes, how they are functioning and how they are behaving. So it becomes a little challenging, but yes. Okay. Network processor. Now we know that whatever at layer 3, it will be handled by network processor. One thing. Second is it is directly attached to the network interface, right? So whatever traffic which comes to an interface, automatically the network processor is basically handling that. Okay. Now we have something which is called as a system on a chip. Now it's like jack of all. Okay, where if in case you have a very lower model, low end model, then you cannot have a dedicated security processor or a CP or a NP, right? So what happens is you would get an SoC, which is security on a chip. That basically means this guy. So you have the NP over here. Okay, you have the CP over here. You have the general purpose processor over here, the external IO as in the USB or the Ethernet. So point over here is that it's just one chip, and in that chip there are certain segments being made, and that particular segment is dedicatedly handling CP or the NP or whatever it is, right? So again, these are for low end devices. Okay, optimized performance for entry level. So yeah, in a way low end. So stock platforms includes N turbo as well. So N turbo is basically nothing over here. See, this is N turbo. So when we say N turbo is network processor. Network processor is N turbo is network processor. Okay. Knowledge check. Okay. So which is a more accurate description of a modern firewall? So answer is B, a multifunctional device that inspects network traffic from the perimeter or internally within a network that has many different entry points. Okay. A is a device that inspects network traffic at an entry point to the internet and within a simple, easily defined network perimeter. No, so those time are gone. So that is a traditional setup. Second, which solution specific to Fortinet enhances performance, reduces latency for specific features in traffic? So now we all know that it's acceleration hardware or called as SPU. Okay, so make sure that you guys know the CP, NP, SP, and FortiSOC. Okay, all right. Now let's move on. So that was the high level features. Okay, an overview, 10,000 feet above overview of what exactly the FortiGate could be look like. Okay. Fine. Now the next is setup decisions, as in the identifying the factory default settings, selecting an operation mode, okay, and understand the FortiGate relationship with the FortiGuard. Now, what is FortiGuard? We'll talk about this and distinguish between the live queries and package updates and all that stuff. Okay. All right. So let's see. First thing is modes of operation. All right. Now, see, when I talk about modes of operation, what does it basically mean? You have two options with the FortiGate firewall. You'll get two options. One is called as the NAT. One is called as a transparent. Okay. Now, see, NAT is an OSI layer 3 router. Okay. Interfaces have IP addresses. Packets are routed by the IP and configured per Vdom. Okay. See, when I say it's a layer 3 router, this point and this point are like very obvious, right? Configured per Vdom. Now, what is Vdom? See, V stands for virtual. Okay. And DOM stands for domain. So basically, we're talking about virtual domain. Okay. People who are coming from Cisco architecture may know a terminology which is called as virtual context, right? How many of you know what is virtual context? Just put yes in the chat box. How many of you know what is virtual context? Okay. Jitin, Nilesh, Hari Krishna, Nitin. Okay. So you guys know what is virtual context. Now again, virtual context is basically something which is a terminology. Terminology what means a name, a term given, right? Now, since it is Cisco, you call that virtual context. In FortiGate, you call that virtual domain. So what is virtual domain or virtual context? Nothing but virtual firewall. Okay, now what is virtual firewall again? See, virtual basically means that something which you cannot really touch, right? Not tangible, right? That is virtual. So firewall is again, if you, I mean, let's take our own example. We are configuring everything in our own lab, right? On top of a VMware, right? So can you touch that FortiGate firewall that you have in the lab? No, right? But can you perform all the functions and functionalities of a firewall? Absolutely, right? So that is what a virtual firewall is. That's something which you cannot really see, but you can make it function inside the network. So Jitendra says firewall inside a firewall. Absolutely, one line definition. So maybe in an interview you can also say this. What is a virtual firewall? Firewall inside a firewall. Okay. So, but please expand that. Okay. So yeah. So that is NAT for you. The other mode of firewall is called as transparent. Now this works at the switch level. Switch level, when I say switch, this is late. Oh, sorry, it's already written. Okay. So it's at working at the layer 2. Okay. Switch level. Now, when I say layer 2, we all know that interfaces do not have IPs. Okay. Because at layer 2, IPs do not, I mean, IP does not even exist. IPs exist at layer level, layer 3 level, right? Layer 2, you have MAC addresses, right? So that is exactly what, so they be say same as VCS of PA. So I'm not really sure of the Palo Alto. So VCS, is it like virtual firewall? Is it what in Palo Alto we say that? Maybe yes. Okay. All right. So Davey says yes. All right. So good to know. Thank you. I also know something which is apart from FortiGate. Okay. So interfaces don't have IP addresses. It's basically functions on layer 2. Cannot route packets, only forward or block. Okay. What does it mean? Cannot route, only forward. See, in a way, let's say for example, this guy is working as a layer 2. Okay. So you will not have any IP addresses, right? So what will happen is the policy or the ACL, or I mean not ACL. So let's say firewall rule what you'll configure will be based on interfaces. So let's say for example, this is interface 2 and this is interface 3. So you'll say a firewall rule for port 2 to port 3. Okay, that is how you'll create the rule. In NAT mode, you'll create the rule with the source IP going to a specific destination IP, right? But it's in the NAT mode. In the transparent, you need to configure on the port level because again, no IPs, right? So transparent. Now question comes up as in why do I need transparent? Hmm? It's very valid, right? It's very genuine. Why do I need transparent? See, a lot of times there are certain situations and scenarios where a company would like to test a firewall, but they cannot really make any changes in the network itself. Okay, so in that kind of an environment, what you can do is you can implement the firewall at a layer 2 level. So you do not have to make any changes in the IP level. You will just implement, you will integrate the firewall, and you'll just start off all the kind of scannings that you have, all the kind of security profiles that you have, and it will be from this port to that port. That's it. Just to know how exactly the firewall is working, how much CPU utilization is taking, how much memory is being taken up, how the firewall is behaving, how what is the performance and all that stuff, right? So that is only one of the situation. I'm not saying this is the only situation. Okay, that is one of the situations. Second situation could be that, let's say for example, you are trying to implement some certain change. I mean, you already have a different vendor firewall. Now you have to implement, or let's say you have to migrate all the traffic from that vendor firewall to this FortiGate firewall. Now what you do is you implement this whole setup in a what do you say? It's like oh, I lost the word. What do you call like a lab? Sorry, the lab environment. Yes. So basically what happens is you can implement this in a lab environment, a company's lab environment, where you can know and understand how the device is functioning. You can implement all the configurations over there. And then if it is all working fine, then you go ahead and implement that in the production environment. Okay. So Devi says, does the transparent mode has only two interfaces? No, it's not like that. What happens is that you can have multiple interfaces. What I mean is that when you will be creating a role, it will be from one port to other port. That's how we'll be creating. Okay. So factory default. So, guys, I'll be answering questions in the next maybe 15 minutes or so. So use that link. Okay, put these questions, Srinivas. You can put this question in that link as well. Okay, but then I'll quickly answer this. So the Srinivas question says, can we implement transparent mode in NAT? No, transparent mode is a different mode. NAT is a different. So these are two individual modes. You cannot have one mode inside another mode. No. Okay. All right. So let's go into the factory default settings. Now, factory default settings, again, whatever firewall that you have, doesn't matter if it's a entry level or a mid level or a high end. Okay. Whatever firewall that you have, this is the default IP address. Where? At the management interface. Okay, so 192.168.1.99 is the IP address by default. Now again, if it is a high-end device and let's say you have two management interfaces, right? So in that case, you will have 2.99. Management 1 will have 1.99, management 2 will have 2.99. That's how it goes. Okay. Port 1 or internal interface on entry level, that's fine. Yeah, so port 1. So again, if you have an entry level firewall, you will not have an MGMT port. So there you will have port 1, and over there you will have this IP of 192.168.1.99. Sorry. So ping HTTPS SSH protocol management enabled. So this is enabled by default. Okay, it's not that you have to go ahead and enable ping HTTPS and SSH. These are enabled by default. Okay, built-in DHCP server is enabled on port 1 or internal interface. Yes, you will see that. And most of you guys who have already implemented the lab, you have already noticed this, but you will see this, that once we are configuring and when we configuring the lab, you will see that the port 1 is already by default configured with the DHCP server, and you will get an IP address over there. Okay, so only on entry level models that supports DHCP server. Yeah. So yes, so now default login, user is admin, password is blank. Not as in BLANK, no, blank as in no, nothing. Just hit enter. Okay. Both are case sensitive, so it's not like you can put in admin and it will take it up. No, you need to have all in small. Okay. Modify the default blank password. So it's like anyway, as soon as you hit enter, right, it is going to ask you to change the password. That's given. You cannot move further without changing the password. Okay, next is can access FortiGate on the CLI, of course. Console without the network, CLI console widget and terminal emulator such as Putty or Delta, whatever it is. So you'll have a console port and you can use that to basically access the FortiGate firewall on the CLI. Okay, so and console is basically dedicated CLI. You cannot have a GUI over there. If you want to have GUI, MGMT port or any other port, if you have configured it, you can use it to use CLI as well as GUI. But console is basically, we all know, we are all part of network security. So you all know that console is basically for a out of band management of the device. Okay. FortiGuard subscription. Okay, so we are going to talk about the FortiGuard subscription in the web filtering, but just to give you an idea of what exactly this is. So what happens is that it's a server, right? It's basically a server. Just like you have, if you want to update your Windows machine, Windows 10, it takes updates, right? Patch management. So it takes updates and patch management from the Windows servers, right? Which is available, I mean, Microsoft server, which is available all across the globe. Whatever your location is, it doesn't really matter, right? So in the same manner, you have the FortiGuard servers, which is available all across the globe, and all the kinds of updates, okay, you will get that from over here. Okay, now does it tell you what No. Okay, so let me show you. Let me tell you. So antivirus, IPS, application control, web filtering, DNS filtering. What else do we have? Mm, yeah, I think that's pretty much it, right? So all these and all these UTM features or security features, right? All these features takes update from your FortiGuard server. Okay, major data centers in the North America, Asia, and Europe. That's fine. And FortiGate prefers data center in the nearest time zone. Yes, that's true. So what happens is that wherever your firewall is located, and whatever time zone you are located. So the first thing is that it will try to find the server which is in the same time zone. And if in case it is not, then probably whatever is the nearest time zone. Okay. Then package updates, FortiGuard, antivirus, and IPS. Yes. So, oh, it did help. Okay. So now see, this is, you can note this down if you want to. Update.fortiguard.net. Okay, so any kind of antivirus updates, any kind of IPS updates, okay, that will be taken care by update.forticat.net. This is a question in the NSC4 certification. Please learn this. Okay, and TCP 443 is being used for that. Now live queries. What is live queries? Live queries are part of your web filter. Okay, DNS filter. It's a part of live. So live queries is a part of these. Okay. Now, what happens is in the live query, um, um, what happens in live query is that whenever a traffic comes to your FortiGate firewall, I'll just give you one liner. We'll anyway discuss this in great details in the web filtering, but just to give you a one liner, that live query is nothing but whenever, since let's say for example, I am a user and I want to access facebook.com. Okay, now I have a web filter category of social media, and inside that I have said that all the social media categories will be blocked. Okay, I have under the web filter, I have already created a web filter that if anybody is trying to access a social media it website, it will be blocked. Okay, now how does the FortiGate firewall know that which website comes under social media category? Okay, so that is where your FortiGuard server comes into play. Okay, FortiGate will make a request as soon as, let's say, a user traffic comes to your FortiGate firewall. Okay, so let's say this is FGT. Okay, so I am a happy user, and in the lunch time I'm trying to access Facebook. Okay, now over here the social media category is blocked. Okay, now what happens is as soon as I receive this traffic, FortiGate is going to look and check, okay, this particular user is trying to access FP. Let me just quickly check my web filter. Now web filter says social media category blocked, but FortiGate does not know that Facebook is a social media website. Okay, it does not have that kind of intelligence. It only knows this is a website. So what does this FortiGuard does is that it's going to do a live query to your FortiGuard server, and it is going to ask, hey, you know what, somebody is coming with facebook.com, which category it is. So FortiGuard is going to say, hey, you know what, this is social media category. So FortiGate will go ahead and say, oh, okay, this is blocked. I cannot allow this guy to, access Facebook. So go ahead and drop the packet. Okay, that is what live queries basically mean. Okay, so again, I'm actually winking, but question on NEC4 examination. What is the name of live queries? So what URL the traffic goes when it is going for a live query? Service.forticat.net and secure wff.forticat.net. Okay, note this down, learn it, or whatever you want to do. If anybody you are going for a certification, make sure you know this. Next. Okay, so this is anyway, this document is available to you guys, so you would be able to go through this. But I want you guys to make notes. Reason is that having a documentation is just like a personal satisfaction, psychological satisfaction that I have all the notes. Okay, but it won't stay in your mind. You make notes while you're on the session, and it will stay with you. That's how our minds are designed, unfortunately or unfortunately, from childhood. Okay, so FortiGuard subscription services, FortiGuard third-party SSL certificate verification, OCSP stapling check. What does this mean? Okay. Again, we are going to cover this in the certification topic, but in very short one line, this basically means that whatever website that you access, is it really valid website or not? That is what the FortiGate will check. Okay. Default FortiGuard access mode is anycast. Optimize the routing performance to the FortiGuard servers, and FortiGate gets a single IP address of the domain name for each FortiGuard service. Basically, in a way, it says that you will have a URL for all the kind of features and functionalities that you have configured. And whenever you need to make a query to the FortiGuard server, it will go to a specific URL. Okay. So, for example, let's look over here. If there is an object that needs to be downloaded, so it'll go to global update.fortinet.net. Okay. If it needs to do some kind of a query, okay, over here, so it will go to global guard service.fortinet.net. FortiGate cloud login. So if you have cloud login, so this is the URL. Okay, cloud management, this is the URL. So again, this is just an interesting fact. It is not something which is being asked on the certification. Okay. So if you know, great. If you do not know, not really something which you need to be bothered about. Okay. All right. So knowledge check. Okay. So which protocol does FortiGate use to download antivirus and IPS? It's TCP. Okay. Obviously, because the traffic is going to 443, right? So it has to be TCP. Common sense. How does FortiGate check content for spam and malicious websites? Live queries to FortiGuard. Okay. So anything which needs to be allowed or not, it is going to do a live check first. Okay. And then if it is allowed or not, according to whatever the category that particular website belongs to, then it will allow or deny that traffic. Okay. Okay. Next is basic administration, which is basically how to configure the FortiGate firewall. That is one thing which I would like to, take you guys on a practical experience, because I mean, PPT does not really do a good job with that. Okay. So let me go ahead and stop this for now. Okay. All right. Now, hmm, let's do one thing. So we will, I'll just take this. I can see a lot of questions coming in. Okay, hold on. Um, Let me share this with you guys. Okay, so let me quickly answer this first. So any way to get the information about the hardware chip NP76 from the CLI or the GUI? Yes, you have. You can get that information. There are a couple of commands, okay, that you can execute to get that information. Okay. Kripasundar, just do one thing. Maybe by tomorrow you let me know. Okay, so I'll share those. I'll basically show you how to get those information, because again, see, we are in the VMware, so we will not be able to. We cannot execute those commands for very obvious reasons, because we do not have those things. It's a hardware command, so it will only work on hardware models. So maybe something which is on your in something which is on your company, you can basically run those commands. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll probably put this in the group. Okay. All right. Now, next question, if I continue with the old stable firmware, there will be no problem for getting the updated rated antivirus and FS. No, it's absolutely fine. See, what happens is it doesn't matter that what device or firmware that you are part of. What basically is considered is that it is your license. I mean, if your license is still valid, then you do not have to worry about anything. Your license is a verification that you will keep on getting updates. Okay. If you do not have the license with you, yes, then it is to worry about. But then if you have license, do not worry. You will still keep on getting. A lot of people and a lot of companies, they are still on 5.6, and there are companies who are on 6.0, 6. Two, okay, they are not moving forward to a newer firmware just because of the reason is that because everything is working fine, they have everything in a stable condition, there is no challenges coming up, so why to upgrade and maybe open doors to some bugs or something like that. So that is again, there people do not really move on to the next upgrade unless it is required, or maybe it is a necessity, or maybe there is an open bug and you need to fix that, you need to upgrade to fix that bug. So if you are on a stable firmware, if you have the license, do not worry about it. Okay, so Davies has SPU, ST have all the traffic. Why 70%? No, so what I mean is that according to whatever your device is, okay, so on the basis of that, majority of the traffic should be handled by your ASIC 40 ASIC chips. Okay, it's not something which is supposed to be every time. No, because a lot of times the configuration differs in all the firewalls, and how do you do that, that makes a lot of difference. Okay, so it's not, it's 70%, is just there are certain firewalls where I've seen the traffic being handled by those 48 chips at 70% of traffic. It was configured to do that. Okay, but if you do not make any changes, if it is in the default settings, so you may be around looking at 30%, 40%, something like that, even low, or maybe it could be higher. Again, this is something which is very specific to the environments, to the configuration, so I cannot make it a point that okay, it is supposed to be like this only. Okay, all right, so the next is transparent mode only have to, no, so I think I answered that question. So Jiten says packet flow of the Fortigate firewall. I think Jiten, tomorrow we are going to talk about that. Okay. Next is, see, why am I doing the basic configuration today is that you, once you get a hang of how exactly the firewall is working, right? And then if I explain you the packet flow, it will make much more sense to you. Otherwise I'll keep on telling, it will be like a theoretical session, maybe a boring session is there, but I want you guys to understand that from a practical perspective as well. So that's why a little basic configuration, and then the packet flow. Okay, but don't worry, it is covered, so you will go through it. Okay, next is um, oh, I lost it. Oh, okay, Shrikant. So if the firewall is in transparent mode and the interface doesn't have IP addresses, how we manage the firewall, like management login? Oh, good question. Okay, so what happens is, in this kind of a situation, you will have a management port that will be a dedicated management port out of band, and through that you will be logging into your FortiGate firewall. So in the transparent mode, what happens is only one interface will be the one which you can give an IP address. It will be acting as a management port, nothing more apart from that. You can get the CLI access, you can get the GUI access, that is it. And you can basically monitor and make changes to the firewall and everything. It will be out of band, something which is not a part of your network. So you have to, maybe make some changes, or maybe add that interface to a management traffic VLAN and then access the firewall. Okay, but you only have one interface which will be acting as a management interface, and only will be used for logging in, making changes, and looking into what the firewall is, what the firewall is basically doing. Okay, I hope that answers your question. If in case yes, you can put it in the chat box, or if you want more clarification, also put it in the chat box. Okay, next is if you want to deploy the new firewall in production, then what step will be required? Okay, that's a very open question. So when we are deploying a new firewall, what is required is that you should know that what kind of implementation your company is looking for. Is it a VPN implementation, or maybe let's say, for example, you already have a different firewall which was working, now you're migrating all the traffic. So again, Jiten, that's a very open question. Maybe after the class we can discuss about it, one to one. So that will make much more sense. Okay, next is does UTM firewall also taking all the updates from the product? Yes. So UTM, so antivirus, web filtering, application control, IPS, this is all a part of your UTM. Okay, so all these updates are taken. Any kind of update basically is taken by FortiGuard servers. Okay, it's like only, so can your Microsoft Windows can take update from, let's say, any other a vendor apart from Microsoft? No, because when it comes to Windows platform, it will only take updates from the Microsoft servers, right? So it's exactly like that. Since you are working with the FortiOS, it will only take updates from the FortiGuard server. So, okay. DB has does FortiGate keep a local FortiGuard local cache? Yes, it does. For 60 minutes, it does take that. So what happens is, let's say, for example, if somebody is trying to access Facebook, now after 10 minutes, again, somebody is trying to access Facebook. So it's not that FortiGate will again and again, do a query every time. It will keep a cache copy, and you can change that actually. So you can keep a copy of your cache for maybe 60 minutes or even 1 day or 2 days, whatever you want. Okay. So that is possible. Okay, do we have to connect WAN interface in transparent mode? So see, when it comes to transparent mode, there's nothing as in WAN interface or LAN interface. It is like just the port numbers, port 2, 3, 5, 7, whatever it is. Or if it is does have LAN interface or WAN interface, then yes. Okay, you need to, you will know that, okay, the traffic when it is going out, it is taking this particular interface. So let me configure the WAN interface as an out interface, and let me configure my LAN interface as a ingress interface. Okay, so it's not that it is a requirement. It is just that wherever you are putting your firewall in the transparent mode, you will know that which part of the network is the egress part, or where the traffic is going out on the internet, or maybe onto the DMZ server. So on that particular direction, you will be putting your WAN port, if it is mentioning on the firewall as WAN port. Otherwise, whatever the port number it is, that it will be mentioning. Does that answer your question, Pushkar? You can put it in the chat box. Okay, great. Nitin has a question. Live check will happen for every packet, even if you have updated web filter databases on a live check will happen for every packet, even if you have the updated web filter database. I think that is answered in the question of that whether it keeps a local cache of it, right? So again, if I'm accessing a website and somebody else is also accessing the same website, so the FortiGuard will keep a cache of it, and it will know that, okay, Facebook is basically a part of the social media category, and there is another request which is coming for the same destination or the same website. So I know that this is a social media category. So I'll not again request for a live query. I'll just go ahead and use this cache and deny the traffic or allow the traffic, whatever the case may be. Okay, Nathan, does that answer your question? Okay, all right. So I think that's pretty much it. We do not have more. Let me just quickly check. Let me refresh. Okay, got it. So it's 7:05. Okay, we still have time. So let's go ahead and remove this first. So where is the Eve? Got it. Let me power this guy on. Okay. Now. Nilesh, I missed out your questions. Can you put that again, please? Or you can add it in the link. Just link click on the link and you will be getting the access. You can put it by your own. So it's not something that I can do. All right. So I'm just powering up. So guys, all of you have access to your lab, right? If anybody has not yet done I'm not able to access the link. Why? Hold on. Nilesh, try again. You should be able to because it's open actually. Okay. Anyway, so let's come back. Forget not. So I'll open this. Okay. So my session logged out. Guys, this would happen to you as well, that you are powered on and maybe you left the session for some time, and when you click on it, you still get the login page, and then you're putting in your username and password, it is not happening anything. Okay, so log out and log in back again. Admin Eve. Oh, I made a mistake. Hold on. Admin Eve. Nilesh, were you able to access the link? If not, tell me. Okay, close. Now let's open this up. Okay, I think I got the access now. Okay. All right. Now let's do one thing. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And now we all know that if you are doing this for the first time and you're logging in, what is the default username and password? Can somebody tell me in the chat box, what is the default username and password? Okay, so Chetan says admin. Okay. Okay, Devi, Pushpa. Okay, good. I, this is good. You guys are really active. Password is blank. Yes. Admin, nothing. Yeah. Okay, done. So you are forced to change the password. So let's, I'll take the strongest password in the world, which is password. Confirm password, password, done. Okay. So Nilesh has done, submitted the question. Great. Okay. So now the first thing that you need to check whenever you are going to log into the Fortigate firewall, not every time, but you should know this. Get system interface. Now, oh, sorry. It's not the get system interface, it's get system status. Okay, so now we are going to talk about this in great details. Okay, sorry, I'm little, I don't know, I'm in a very happy mood today. Okay, so get system status. So what does it basically talks about? So the first thing is, why do you need to execute this command even at the first place, right? Why do you need this? Exam question. Okay, they will, I mean, in the examination, you will not get this. Okay, it will be maybe grayed out or maybe something like that. Okay, you'll get just like this. Okay, so let me show you what I got. I got this. Okay, this is what I got. Sorry, this is what I got. And the question was, looking at the output, what command can you use to know this information? Okay, that was the question. Okay, so now you know, get system status. Okay, so if you want to know the firmware, get system status, you'll know over here that what is the firmware version. So for us, it is a VM64, right? For you, it would be whatever the model that you are on. So let's say 100E, or let's say 1100E, okay, or whatever the case may be, right? Next is the databases, as in the virus databases. Okay, you can see the IPS database, the application database, right? Now, if you look closely, you see this 2018. Wow, that's quite old. It's like 4 years old. Okay, now this is the default um, database. The default database. Okay, you need to have an active license to update them. If you do not have any license, then of course these will remain dormant, or these will not be updated. And it's fine, because we are anyway, trying and testing things in the environment, in the lab environment, right? So, but then yes, what you actually are looking for over here is that you should be getting values something like this: 2022 04 dot today is 16, right? So 16, and let's say 18 dot 30, let's say. Okay, so you will know that, okay, the last update on my virus database was 30 minutes back. Okay, worst case scenario, it could be 1 day. It should not go beyond that. Okay, you should be checking this. You can check this from the GUI as well, as in, when was the last time it communicated. But the best way to check this is actually from the get system status. Okay, these values should be at least on the same date, whatever the date you are on, at least on the same day, maximum 1 day. I mean, as in yesterday. Okay, should not go way beyond, should not be greater than 1 day. If it is 2 days, 3 days, or 5 days, or a week, then for any reasons, your FortiGate firewall is not able to take updates from your FortiGuard server, from the FortiGuard server. If it is going above 2 days, okay. Anything which is on the same date or anything which is till yesterday, okay, you can consider fine. I mean, it's okay. But if it is going more than that, 2 days and above, then your FortiGate firewall is maybe because of some reason that is not able to take updates. Okay. There's one thing more that you can do. A lot of time when you configure, please remind me when I'm taking a login page, right? I mean the web GUI page, just remind me about the updates, the FortiGuard updates. Okay. So what happens is a lot of time when you are configuring the FortiGuard updates, you have an option of schedule the updates. You can schedule your updates. Okay. Now let's say for example you are scheduling your updates at 1 a.m. in the night. Okay. So if you are scheduling that in the 1 a.m. in the night, which is not wrong, a lot of people do that. But let's say, for example, because of certain issues, your upstream router or your gateway had some issues, or maybe some configuration issue, or whatever the case may be, you were not able to make that update at that period of time. Maybe an ISP issue. Let's say everything is fine from your end. ISP, there was an ISP issue, and you were not able to take the update. Okay, so the FortiGate firewall will, take the next update by next day, 1 a.m. Still not able to take an update again, problem, right? So if that's the case, always make sure that rather than scheduling this for a specific time of a day, make it by 2 hours, which is actually too much to ask, but 6 hours is maximum that you can go for. Okay, so every 6 hours it will make an update. It will try to make an attempt to update, which is a good number to have. Okay, next is, so these were the databases. Why do you need the database? What is the number and how to check those? Is it clear, all of you? Yes, no, maybe? Type it in the chat box, please. Why you have these databases and what's the point and what should be the ideal values? Okay. Okay. All right. Now the next is serial number. Very important. Okay. So the Srinivas put that in the link. I'll again open up the session by 7:50. Okay. Uh, you okay. So basically, what happens is whenever you update, right? So you do not have to take an. It's not like you have to reboot the firewall. Okay, you do not have to reboot it. Okay, this is incremental updates. Incremental update basically means that when you are taking an update, right, it will take the update fix. See, it's Linux machine, right? If you know this, whenever a Linux machine is updating itself, it will never reboot. Only Windows systems are the one on this planet, on this damn planet, which takes updates and then reboots itself. Okay, so whenever you are maybe working on, so when I was working on the certified ethical hacker, I was going through penetration testing softwares, and I was updating a lot of things. Everything I mean, I have to update. So I mean, I never had to reboot my firewall, reboot my system, and I was going through some articles as well. So they were also saying that when it comes to Unix machine or Linux machine, they do not have to update itself. They restart their services, which is exactly the same thing as rebooting the system. Okay, so it is a very Windows thing to ask, which is absolutely fine. I mean, it's not that it's a genuine question. Okay. Next is the serial number. So see, serial number basically you should know this if you want to look into the license category. If you are checking your licensing, okay, and you want to know whether your license are valid or not, you need to know your serial number. Okay, and all your licenses are mapped to your serial number. Okay, for different vendors it is different. For some, I think it is the MAC address or something like that. I know about Sophos. I think for them it's the MAC address, but for FortiGate Firewall it is the serial number. Okay. Now the next is the expiration date, as in see, we are working with the evaluation license, right? Sorry, spelling mistake. So we are working with the evaluation license, and for me, this will expire on May 1. Okay, which is okay. A day before that, I'll probably do a wipe and save the configuration, and that's pretty much it. And then wipe it again, so I'll again get the 15 days. Okay. Next is the VM resources. Now, again, for you, since it will be a hardware device, it will be whatever resources that you have. But for us, it is one CPU and only one is allowed. I cannot go above that. Even if you try, you can try this out actually. If you want to experiment this up, you can just go ahead and put in CPU, maybe two CPU cores or three CPU cores. It will not restart. It will again make itself one and then restart. This is the amount of memory that you can go. 2 GB of RAM you can go. So if you put in 2048, it should take it up. But 1024 is more than sufficient. You do not really need to go above 2 GB. Yes, if you are working on Google Cloud and you have 32 GB of RAM, absolutely go. You have the luxury. Okay, log hard disk. In previous batches, actually, I used to add couple of commands and I gave you guys hard disk as well. But actually, it is not required because the amount of log information, whatever we are going to configure, is anyway I would be able to show you on the firewall itself. So it's basically additional space which will take up from your 100 GB, and I do not really want that. So that's why I do not take that. But you in your hardware devices, you will see this. If it is an entry level device, you will exactly see like this: log hard disk not available, because in the entry level devices you do not have hard disks. Okay, but on the medium level, on the higher end, all the devices, all FortiGate devices have hard disks. Next is the host name. Okay, so host name is about what exactly. So this is your host name, right? Oh yeah. Now, whatever company that you're working with, for every company they have a different host name of their FortiGate firewall, depending on the which uh, which segment they are a part of or which department they are a part of. They give the host name like that. So basically, it's a name how to individually identify that particular firewall. Okay. Okay. Next is operation mode. So we have already discussed about this NAT and transparent, right? Now virtual domain. So by default, you do not have any virtual firewall in the in your FortiGate firewall, but by default it will show you root. So basically, this is when you do not have any virtual firewalls. If you implement virtual firewalls, then you might get whatever firewall that you are part of. But this is default. So you will always see root everywhere. Okay. Maximum number of virtual domains, you have one. See, we are in the evaluation license, right? So that is why one. But by default, if you have a hard disk, sorry, if you have a hardware, then 10 virtual domain is by default given to you for free. Now, in my companies or in my organization, I have a license for 100 virtual domains. Okay, now this is again, it's a license. You have to buy this license. So by default, how many you get? 10. Okay, that is default. If you want to have more than 10 virtual domains, okay, I'm assuming you should be having at least a medium level to high end device, okay, at least 1000 series FortiGate model, okay. And if you are looking for more than 10 virtual domains, you need to buy license. You need to apply that license, and then once you do that, you will get whatever number of license you have. So 25, 30, 50. So there's no standard as in you can only have 25 and the next is 50. No, whatever the number that you want, you can have that on the basis of license that you have. That you can check with the sales team or maybe the partner. They would be able to let you know that what is the cost for it, if in case it is required. But by default, you get 10. Okay, you do not need to pay anything extra for it. Okay. All right. So next is so virtual domain status 1 in NAT mode and 0 in transparent mode, of course. See. Okay. The next is virtual domain configuration disable. In the evaluation license, you do not get to work with the virtual domain, which we have already explained. So this is the only topic in the class that I'll be going full theory. Okay. Okay. So next is this is a standard FIPS standard. So if you are maybe a security vendor or maybe a security company, then probably you need to go for a FIPS certification as well. Okay, HA. So as of now, it's a standalone. All right. Now you can have an active or an active passive. Again, it's an individual session. We are going to work on this once we reach there. So what is that? We are going to talk about that. Okay. But yes, from the get system status, you can also know this. Okay. And there was a question to one of my students who was going through the NEC4. It was a multiple choice question, and the question was basically something I do not remember the exact question, but it was something to do with the HA, and the question was about what all commands you can use to know information about the HA. So he did select the get system status. That's what I remember. So just make sure that you, whenever you are working on the get system status, you should know that you sorry. So you can know the FortiOS, you can know the database or UTM database. Okay. Next is you will know the serial number. You will know the expiry date. Okay. You can know the hard disk. You can know the virtual domains. You can know the HA. Okay. Now this is again the information about your operating system. Then you have the time, of course, that what time does your firewall has right now. Okay. And you should check this because a lot of time, if you do not have the right correctly NTP configured, it could cause issues, maybe session problems or something like that. So make sure that your NTP is correctly configured on your firewall. Last reboot reason, power cycle. So if in case there was a reboot, then whatever the reason was, it will tell you that as well. Okay, now I got timed out, no problem. Okay, so let me log in back. Hold on. Now once we are done with the get systems status, I hope it cleared a couple of your doubts. Okay, if anything that you would like to talk about, just use that link and let me know. Okay, next thing that I would like to talk about is it's quite interesting. I mean, for me, so there's a command which goes by show system interface. Okay, so it's very simple to understand. I mean, the command itself basically tells you that I want show me whatever the system interfaces that you have. Okay, so it shows me port 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then you have the SSL route, which is for your SSL interface or your SSL VPN, and then you have something which is a Forti link. Forti link is nothing, is just like I mean, it's like a small um, it's like a switch. You can add couple of ports inside Forti link, and they all will act as a native switch. That's it. That's what it basically means. And it is like a PAGP. And I hope you guys know what is PAGP. It's basically an aggregation protocol, and you can use this to basically connect with any of your routers or switches, which is also working on the same aggregation protocol. Okay. All right. So okay. So the question is that this is show system interface. This will tell you how the configuration of every interface looks like. Okay, is it clear? Now there is one more command which says get system interface. Okay. Now the output is a little different as compared to show system interface. Okay, if you look closely, do you see this? This is port 1, right? Now inside this port 1, it says the mode is DHCP and this is the IP address. The status is up. Okay, so if I do a get system interface, I get this kind of a output, and if I do a show system interface, I get this kind of an output, right? So what is the difference and why do we need it? Where should I use show system and where should I use get system? Okay. See, what happens is show system will tell you how the interface is configured. Please note this down. You will not find this anywhere in the documentation. Okay. So show system interface will tell you how the interface is configured from the syntax point of view. Okay, how the syntax is. So if I have to configure let's say if I have to configure port 1, I have to exactly run this command: config system interface, edit port 1, set Vdom, set mode, allow access, ping, HTTP, and all that. This is default, by the way, and this is also default. Okay, so my point is, if I have to know what is the right syntax to get into the interface, I'll use this. And what are the default configurations of the interface? I'll use show system. But if I need to know the outcome, the result, the output of the interface or whatever is configured on the interface, then I'll use this one. So get is about the result or the output, as in whatever is configured. So what is configured over here? it is configured to use DHCP, right? It is configured to use DHCP. So how will I know this? By using the show command. Okay. Now, what is the output of this DHCP? Meaning, this command was executed. It is saved in my Fortigate firewall. So, what was the output of this? So, I'll get this from the get system interface. So, I'll know that the configuration of the DHCP gave me an output of this. As in, this is the IP address. This is the output. So, you won't be able to see that information in the show system. You will see that only over here because this is the output of it. If you want to see the output of any command, you use get. You can use it anywhere. I mean, whatever the command is, so you can do that. Okay. Now there are certain commands with which you won't be able to use it, but mostly you would be able to use it. Okay. All right. So I know that because of the DHCP, the output is that I got this IP 192.168.0.8. Now all of you guys know I am having the EVNG in the range of 192.168.0.5 and 0.8 is also in the same segment. Now what does it mean is pretty much simple. So 192.168.0.8. Should I be able to access this? 0.8, right? 0.8, yeah. Okay. So does it say anything else? Disable explicit proxy, disable. So no. Does it show me that what services are configured? No. Now, did you notice one thing? In my question, what did I ask? What service is configured? Get shows me the output, not the configuration. So if I want to show the config, if I need to see the configuration, what will I do? Show system interface. Okay. Over here, I'll get to know that, oh, okay, so I have configured this for ping, HTTPS, and SSH, and FGFM. Okay. So I know that in the evaluation mode, the HTTPS will not work for me. Okay. I need to have HTTP enabled, only then it will work for me. Now guys, before I move forward, does it make sense to you, the show system and the get system? Are you able to understand what I'm trying to say? Are you able to understand what is the difference between these two? Yes? Type it in the chat box. Yes. Okay, great. Hope this adds value to your mind. Okay, so I know that if I have to access this IP address, I have to add HTTP because again we are in the evaluation instance. So what I'll do is I know that so let me show you this again. Show system interface. Okay, now I'll be able to I'll be able to see what all the configuration is. Okay. So Devi has the question, why can't we access with the HTTPS? Devi, put that question in the link, please, and we'll go with this question again. Okay. So Jitendra says very in a one-liner. Okay, so I think he's a master of one-liners. So he says that show system will display the configuration, get system will display the services. In a way, yes, you can say services slash output. Basically, you can say, and then the statement will make much more sense. Okay, so anyways, coming back. So show system interface. Okay, when I do this, I see all the interfaces. Now, let's say, for example, I'm not in the mood to look into all the interfaces. Okay, I don't want to check all the interfaces. I say, show me just port 1. So I say show system interface, and I say port 1. And I'm putting tab actually, so it is automatically populating it. Okay, so I'll do this, enter, and that's it. So what will happen is that it is going to just show me that particular interface. So let's say, for example, I want to show port 2. So I'll say port 2. That's it. You get port 2. Let's say I want to have port 4. That's it. Let's say I want to have port 8. Oh, no entry. So of course, because there's only 4 ports. So how can this guy show me, port 8? Anyway, so now what I wanted to basically tell you is that if I want to make any changes, I will know what is the syntax. How can I go into the syntax of it? So I'll know from the show command. So I know this. Now what will I do? I need to add HTTP, right? So config system interface. Enter. Now I am in the interface section. Now try to relate this with the, we had this in the routers, global mode, user mode, privilege mode, interface configuration mode. Do you remember all of you guys? Yes. So try to relate from that as well. So now we are in the interface, right? What would you call this if it was a router, if it was a Cisco router? What would you call this? You would have called this as interface configuration mode, right? So what will happen is that config system although see there is no terminology as such in the FortiGate firewall, so do not get confused that it's a terminology that you can use. No, it's not. I'm just trying to explain you that if you are getting into this particular space, then where exactly are you? Where exactly in the firewall are you on? Okay, because in the GUI it is very simple. You click on that and you'll know that okay, this is the page and it is showing all the interfaces. But how will you know from the CLI? Although it's easy to read, but still, you should know. So interface. Now, if I do a show command over here, you know what will happen? It will exactly give me the same output as show system interface. Because see, show system interface basically tells me show me all the interface. Now I am inside the interface and I'm saying show. So again, same output. Okay. Once you get a hang of it, right, it will become so easy for you guys. Okay. So anyways, now I'll say edit because so acha, one thing, do a question mark. If you guys are doing this with me, you can just put a question mark. Okay. So the FortiGate will tell you all the commands that you can start with, all the commands that you can start with, not all the commands that you can make use, because those will be hundreds and hundreds of commands. But these are the 1 2 3 4 5 6, these are the 6 commands that you can start working with. One is edit, basically to edit any of the interfaces. Delete, of course, to delete a interface or any configuration of it. Purge is that it will make it's like a factory format. So if you do this, all the settings of the interfaces will go back to your default state. Get, it's basically the same as asking for get system interface. Then show, again same. And end basically says end and save the last configuration. So in router, what we used to do when we used to configure, we do a control Z. So we come out and then we say copy running config startup config, right? But over here we do not have to do this. Over here we just say end, and whatever changes that we have done, it will be added automatically. Okay, so end is that command for you. Now what I really need to do is inside the interface I have to edit port 1. So I'll say edit, again do a question mark. This you will learn faster with the question mark. So do a question mark, see what you get. See, there is a different way of giving you the output away. This is also one of the ways to look at what interface has what IP address. Okay, so but this is only once you get inside the interfaces, this is what you'll get. Okay, so it says port 1 DHCP, you have an IP address. Then port 2 3 4 doesn't have anything. Those are physical interfaces and all that stuff. So now anyway, I will go into port 1, enter. So it will tell you that do you really want to go into port 1? So it will give a space, and if the command is correct, I'll just hit enter again. I hope this is making sense to you. If in case you are maybe not able to follow, do let me know, or maybe ask me to slow down if I'm going a little faster. So port 1, again I'll do a show command. Okay, so now I know that okay, this is how it is configured inside the interface. Okay, now if I have to take access over here, okay, now HTTPS will not work, right? So let me show you. So HTTP colon first. Let me try this again. See, it is not working, right? So I say set. See, I'm just copying what is already written. So set allow access ping and enter. Sorry, let me do one thing. So say I need HTTP, right? So I'll say HTTP. Do you know what this will do? A lot of people think that since I've added HTTP, so it has added ping, HTTPS, SSH, and HTTP. No, it is not like that. Do you know what has happened? Let me show you. See, do you see this? Since I've just said set allow access HTTP, it is only allowing access to HTTP. So now even if I'm trying to ping, it will not work. If I try to SSH, it will not work. If I try to HTTPS, it's anyway not working. But point over here is only HTTP will work for me. Okay. So if I have to allow ping, HTTP, HTTPS, and SSH, I have to write this down, all of them. Okay, so I say ping, I need this. Oh, sorry, set allow access, ping, HTTP, yep, okay, because HTTPS will not work anyway. Okay, SSH, okay, and that's pretty much it. I do not need anything else. Although there are so many other. Let me do a question mark. Let me show you what all options you have. Okay, you see this? You have HTTPS, you have SNMP, you have telnet. Now nowadays, why do anybody need that? But anyways, FGFM for Forti manager access. We are going to talk about this later. It is that if you want your Fortigate firewall to be managed by your Forti manager, then you allow this. Okay. So if we have time, maybe I'll integrate the Forti manager and I'll show you that as well. Then radius accounting, if you want maybe authentication from the radius. Probe responses, again, it's a different thing. We'll talk about that. Fabric is security fabric. We'll talk about that. And the FTM. So FTM is, again, it's a different device and a different functionality. So we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so now you know that these are the amount of accesses that I can work with. Okay, so now let's talk about that. I have already used the HTTP, ping, SSH, right? This is pretty much it that I need. I'll just hit enter. Now if I do a show command, okay, so you can see that I have an access to ping, SSH, and HTTP. Now let me refresh over here. Now, okay, I'll do a refresh. Okay, so I made changes, but I haven't saved it, right? So if I have to save it, I'll say end, right? So I'll say end. Okay, now the configuration is set. Okay, so now let's try again. See, got the page, right? Now to log in, what do I do? Admin and password. Okay, so this is a Google Chrome thing, so ignore that. Okay, now see, once I logged in, now this will happen exactly in your real environment as well. Okay, if you have a new firewall and you are trying to log into that firewall for the first time, you will get this pop-up, okay, where it is asking you to perform the following steps to complete the setup of this FortiGate firewall. Okay, specify the host name, which is by default there. Then it says change your password, which we have already done, so that is why there is a check mark. In the dashboard setup, it is not a check mark, so I have to do that. And then you have the upgrade from there. So since it's a factory reset, so it feels like that you have already done that. Okay, now either you can go on later or you can do a begin. So if I click on begin, the first thing is it is asking for the hostname because we haven't configured that as of now. It only has the default version. Okay, so you can do one thing, which we are on FortiGate North, right? So okay, so I'll do this. I'll change the name to FGT North. Okay, click on OK. Now it is asking you for the dashboard setup. So select one of the following options to decide what dashboard will be available by default. You can always change your selection or manually customize your own dashboard. So optimal is basically the the popular one, or basically the default widgets that you have. What is the CPU utilization, the memory, and all that stuff. Comprehensive is like all the security features and everything, all the kind of widgets that is available, you'll get that. Okay, now see, this is specific to who is logging in. So since admin is logging in, I'm maybe getting the default one because I'm selecting optimal. Let's say admin 2 or admin 3 is logging in, he'll also get the same page. So it is the dashboard is very individual. What the administrator has configured, what kind of a dashboard, he'll get that kind of a dashboard. Okay, so I click on OK over here. Now the next thing is a pop-up of FortiOS 7.0, okay, where it is basically telling me what are the the newer functional features and functionalities of 7.0. Okay, so we are anyway working on that. So what you do is you click on this, don't show again, because otherwise whenever you log in, you'll get this page. I do not want that. So click on OK. See, now this is the dashboard. You see this over here on the left side, you see it's FortiGate North, and then you have a dashboard. Inside the dashboard, you have status, security, network, user devices, signaling, FortiView sources, FortiView destinations. So this is basically the top sources, top destination, top applications, top websites, top policies, and top sessions. Okay. So after a couple of days of testing and troubleshooting, these things will get filled up. Okay. So this is the dashboard. Okay. Now inside this dashboard, you can check the information which is present, right? So over here you have the system information. So you know what is the host name, the serial number, firmware version, what is the time, what is the WAN IP, and all that stuff. Over here you have the licensing. So of course we do not have a license, but in your company's environment you would definitely have FortiGate support 24/7, and these will be green and check marked. Okay, and this should not be. And if it is the case, then that it says unable to connect the FortiGuard servers, please check your ISP's connection. If in case there is any problems over there, or maybe an upstream router, or maybe some rule which is on the upstream which is blocking the traffic. Okay. Then the virtual machine. Okay, so what kind of virtual machine I have? So allocated number of CPUs and the RAM. Okay, so the maximum I have one, and I have allocated that much. Maximum I can have 2 GB, out of which 1 GB is allocated. FortiGate Cloud not supported, not working. Okay, so this, if you want to remove any kind of a widget, okay, you can just click on this drop down, and it says resize. So you can, the amount of size that it takes, or you can go into settings to make any changes into it, or you can click on remove. Okay, so it will be removed because obviously we're not using that. Okay, next is, I'll put it over here. Okay, now again, this is very interactive. You can use this the way you want. Okay, so anyways, let be like that. Okay, so over here now we know that the amount of administrator. So admin is the guy who is logged in. I just logged in, right? So admin is the guy who logged in, and this is the profile. Okay, so this is the profile that the admin guy has. Okay, this is the user. Okay, now the next is security fabric. We have a different session onto it, although this does not really work well in the evaluation license, but then we are going to talk about this anyway. Okay, next is the CPU utilization. So we know that the amount of CPU which is being handled right now is just 2%, which is okay. What is this? I don't know what is happening. Keep on happening to me. Okay, remove. Okay, yeah. So the amount of CPU utilization as of now, 2%. Okay, and see over here you have 1 minute, right? So over here you do have the option to make this into 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 12 hour, and 24 hour. That's the maximum that you can get, because see this is real time information. Okay, for anything which is historical, you can either have FortiAnalyzer, or you can have SNMP servers, or you can have monitoring servers, which whose job is to basically monitor all these things and keep a data of it. Okay, so but then yes, in the dashboard itself you can select any one of these that you want. If in case you're troubleshooting on some scenario or situation, you can have 24 hours of data which is available for in the graphic format. Okay, so if you keep it running, you will also see this information. Okay, but then people who are working with the GCP, please do not keep it running. That's okay. Okay, so over here as well, you will get the same information. Over here as well, you get the same information. The only difference is that over here you have the memory, as in how much memory. So see over here, 63% of memory is already being used without making any changes, no configuration, nothing. It's all default. Still 63% is being used. So you know that how much is actually a FortiGate VM is taking. Okay. Next is the session. So it's 11 sessions, because you know what these sessions is? Because see over here, who can tell me this? I have not opened any device. It's just the firewall, right? Still saying 11 sessions. What are these 11 sessions? Can anybody tell me in the chat box? We do this 30 minutes. Okay. So the maximum has hit 15, right? So it says HTTPS session, SSH. Okay. What else? So Shrikant says this. What else do you think? What else could be this? Shrikant is partly right. Antivirus IPS updates. Kripa Sindhu, actually correct. Is trying to go to the FortiGuard. Yes, absolutely. So these connections are basically, of course, the one which we are using on the web browser HTTP connection, and a couple of connections which the FortiGate firewall is generating by itself to connect to the FortiGuard servers. Okay, so that's why you are still getting 10 version 20, 10, 12, and all those things. So Devi also says HTTP plus updates. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this is your dashboard. Okay, now the security and network and all these things will basically, as of now, will not have much details to work with. But network is about the number of routes that you have. Security is basically the compromised host, top threats. FortiClient is basically a software just like a Cisco AnyConnect. Okay, and the host scan summary. So in the VMware, you'll not get all this information. If you have your company's FortiGate firewall, go through it. You should be able to see some information. And if in case you feel like there's any doubt, do let me know. Okay. So users and devices, once we are into the authentication part, then probably users and devices will make much more sense to you. Okay. All right. So FortiView sources will not have anything because this is specific to the traffic which is coming from one port and going from another port. So basically user traffic. So I do not have any user traffic. Okay, now this is again, you can switch. I mean, as of now it doesn't have anything, so now, but then if you have a hard disk or something like that, you can go with 10 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, more than that. Okay, so that's all about the dashboard that we have. Okay, now see, the network section, I have the interfaces, right? So remember, I was also going through the interfaces over here as well, right? So this was show system interface. Now over here as well, I'm also getting the same information, right? Now, in the port one, this IP, I'm getting this IP from the DHCP, right? So if I click on edit, this is the place you click on edit. Okay, and in the GUI as well, you see that port one is a little, bigger than the other port. So if I select the second port, you see the second port gets a little bigger. If I select the third one gets a little bigger. So in a way, you can also get to know information about at the physical level. That if I select the port 3, it says it's a 10 gig port, it's a full duplex, it's an auto negotiation, and it's a physical interface. Okay, so you can also get this information just by hovering the mouse over the interface that you have. I was on port 1, so I need to know. So either you can double click, either you can right click and go into edit, or you go over here. So there are 3 ways to go: double click on it, right click and go into edit, or just click on edit. Okay, now see what information do you have. Alias is like a short name or whatever name that you want to give to better understand what port this is. Okay, so for me, let's say this is WAN port for me. Okay, so I'll say alias is WAN. Okay, it's a physical interface. Now VRF, I mean, as in do you have to have any VLAN IDs and all that stuff. Role is basically what role do you want. So now LAN, WAN, and DMZ, this is pre-configured. If you click on WAN, you get an option to restrict the amount of bandwidth, as in how much bandwidth, upload and download bandwidth do you want to put. If you want, you can absolutely go with that. If you do not want, you can keep it 0. Okay, only if you have that category, then go with the role. Otherwise, undefined is fine. Okay, now over here you can see the addressing mode. All right, now in the addressing mode, I see that you have a couple of options. Okay, one is the manual, then you have the DHCP. Okay, so the manual is basically if you want to statically configure an IP address. Okay, DHCP, again, if you want to have, if you already have a DHCP server in your environment and you want to get an IP address from that DHCP server, so you use that. Okay, all right, now what happens is that in this particular section, once you have connected, okay, they will put the question in link. So what happens is when you put this in the DSP, okay, what will happen is that it will of course tell you the IP address that you have, the expiry date, as in what is the time frame. Okay, now see, this is something which is not configured on the firewall itself. This is configured on your DHCP server. Okay, the time duration, least time and least duration that you have. Okay, the DNS server, again, whatever the DHCP server has provided us, and the gateway. Okay, that's basic, right? So whenever you are having a DHCP, these information you get. Okay, now it says I have this option enabled retrieve default gateway from the server. Now, if I disable this, then I can choose my own gateway. And this happens. DHCP server is not always the gateway. It is somebody else, right? So either you can configure your DHCP server to share the gateway as a different IP, or from here you can just disable this and put the gateway IP address as your own. Okay, so you can do that as well. Next is the distance, as in if in case you have multiple DHCP interfaces, then which interface should be taken into priority. The distance will work on that. So it's like the AD distance of the routing protocols. It's exactly the same. Override the internal DNS. So that basically means do you see this option? DNS. It has FortiGuard DNS as well. FortiGuard DNSs. Okay, which is the default DNSs. Now, since we do not have a license, those FortiGuard DNSs will not work for us. Okay, and since over here it is an override internal DNS, this basically means that I will always use this IP 1.1.1.1 and 1.0.0.1. Okay, for any kind of DNS queries, I'll always use this. Okay, because I'm overriding the internal DNS. I hope this makes sense to you. Okay, next, administrative access, as in what kind of access are? Hold on. Okay, great. So administrative access is all about what kind of interface, what kind of access do you have on this interface. So we already did this on the CLI, right? We enabled HTTP, we enabled SSH, and we enabled ping. Apart from this, you have the option to go for SNMP, security fabric, radius accounting, FTM, FMG access, and HTTP. Again, up to you what kind of access you want. Okay, mostly people do go for the SNMP as well, since they have an SNMP server in their organization. Okay, now if you have the logical link protocol in your environment, then what kind of a setting you want over there? In the, oh yeah, this is important. So see this one, let me enable this. Okay, so network detection, sorry, device detection. What does this basically mean is, let's say for example, you are connected to port 3. Okay, so let's say your FortiGate firewall is connected to, this is port 3. This is a switch, and this switch is a layer 2 switch, and then you have multiple PCs. Okay, now over here, what will happen is, all of these have, let's say you have Windows over here, you have Mac over here, you have Linux over here. What will happen is, this device detection will be able to detect which operating system you have, and then it will show you in the log section. So do you see this log and reports? Okay, so over here you will see all kind of, so whatever is the source IP. So let's say this guy is coming with 10.1.1.1. So it will show you one column of source IP, the other column of platform, and it will show you Windows. Let's say this guy is 10. It will show you Mac. So I mean, this is how you will be able to see that what IP is actually coming from which platform. Okay, is it clear, or are you able to understand what I'm trying to say? Okay. Okay, good. Traffic shaping. Now, traffic shaping is okay, although not part of the course, but then I'll explain this. So, traffic shaping is basically when you want that I mean, if you want, let's say for example, let's say you have 100 Mbps connection. You want that up from this 100 Mbps connection, all that I'm putting a cap of 70 Mbps. Okay, because I do not want this interface to choke. Okay, so I am putting a cap of 70, or let's say 80 Mbps. Okay, so there is a cap. So traffic shaping is about putting a cap on the interface, that it should not go beyond a bandwidth that you have set. Okay, so that is what is called as traffic shaping. Okay, this needs to be configured individually. Okay, and you can create an interface, you can create a policy, a bandwidth policy, which will tell that, okay, 80 Mbps or 90 Mbps is the maximum amount of bandwidth that you can use. You cannot go above that. So interface will always stay at 90%, will not go above that every time. Okay, and there's a lot of companies do that to make sure that their ISP connections does not get choked up. Okay. And then you have the status of enable and disable that, let's say for example, if in case you are troubleshooting, then also you can use this enable disable to figure out whether the interface is functioning or not. Or let's say for a future configuration, you make some changes, but then you are right now you're disabling it because you do not want, if anybody accidentally connected the cable, you do not want to, have certain implications out of it, so you can disable it as well. Okay. So now on the, if you look into the right side, okay, you can see that active administrator session. So you would be able to see that, okay, over here, one of the guys is basically logged in. The profile is super admin. This is the interface. This is the method. This is the IP address. Okay. So that's quite a good information to have. Okay. Apart from this, you can see the status as in, is it up or not? What is the MAC address? At times when we are working on a very intense troubleshooting, then MAC address also comes into play. But apart from that, very rare. I'll probably say 5 to 10% out of 10 cases, maybe one case or two case where you might need to know what exactly the MAC address is and is the ARP functioning correctly or not and that stuff. Okay. All right, so I think what we'll do is we'll continue tomorrow with respect to the administrators, the DNS, and the static routes and all those things, and how to take a backup and all those things. We will continue that tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a full-fledged practical session, no theory, no bullshitting, only practicals. Okay, so tomorrow is that class. Okay, let me just quickly check before I move on if we have something. Okay. Uh, 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 um, we have a couple of questions over here. I think this is clear. So SPU are hardware chips. Then how FortiGate VM works without these chips? So again, SPUs are something which is very specific to hardware. VM does not work on it. Okay, VM does not have that capability. Okay, how CPU identify which packet should go to CP and which one to SP? Again, it depends. See. So when the traffic comes into your FortiGate firewall, right? Then it basically, I mean, there are so see, security processor and network processor. These are the chips which is embedded with the interface itself, right? So as soon as the traffic comes in, okay, the network processor starts to work on it. So it's not that it has to go to the CPU. Even before the CPU, it goes over there. Content processor is basically the one which is looking for encryption and decryption, and it is not a part of your network interfaces, right? Since it is not a part of your network interfaces, then the traffic goes to your CPU first, and then the CPU decides whether if the policies and everything allows for any encryption or decryption, then the traffic will go um, to your content processor. Otherwise, not. Okay. Is Vdom different from VM firewall? No, it's Vdom is basically the same thing. It's a virtual firewall. It's just that you will be creating this inside the Fortigate firewall. Okay. Nilesh, in case if you're not, I mean, if there is anything that you would like to add, just let me know. Okay. So don't you think live queries for every packet will slow down the processing? Absolutely. But then it is not that for every query, for every request which is coming in, there will be a query. No. So what will happen is that, and I think I've answered this. So you can keep a cache of the queries for 60 minutes and 120 minutes, and you can go above that as well. So till that time, if there is a query coming in for the same website, it will not go for a live query. It will just use the same cache and give the response back. Okay. Then we have Srinivas. If we do any kind of customization and after upgrade, it might not get the same thing back as the feature doesn't exist anymore. Can we downgrade? Can we downgrade the OS version? How does the license fee works on OS upgrader. See the license that you have. Okay, those licenses are basically for UTM, as in antivirus application, IPS, and all that stuff. It doesn't matter what firmware version that you're on. So if let's say for example you are on 7.0, now tomorrow you decide to go to tomorrow you decide to go to 7.2. Okay, it's absolutely fine because the licenses does not worry about the firmware version. They just check the serial number and does that serial have the contract for the next 2 years or 3 years, and for your UTM profiles as an AV and IPS. So because even with the 7.0 you'll have the AV and IPS, and with 7.2 also you'll have the AV and IPS. So it only functions on the serial number, not, it does not matter what OS version that you are on. Now coming back to the first question, if we do customization after the upgrade, it might not get the same thing as back, as the feature doesn't exist, and though we can be downgrade. So see what happens is, let's say for example you did do a customization, and you upgraded the device, and it breaks, which happens a lot, it's absolutely true. And if that is the case, you can go for a downgrade. Yes, you can, but you just need to make sure that whatever customization that you did, okay, you have a backup of it. Okay, whatever configuration, whatever customization that you did, you have a backup of it. Once you have the backup of it, you can do a downgrade and then make it work. If you do not have a backup, then you might have to do a manual configuration again. But yes, downgrade is an option. That people will basically will not suggest you, but I mean there are situations where you have to downgrade. When you upgrade, there is some bug. Your services network is not working the way it is supposed to. In that case, you do have to downgrade, and that is possible. No problems at all. Whatever customization is, if you have the backup, great. If you do not, you might have to do the manual configuration again. But yes, to give you an answer in a very short term, yes, it is possible. Okay, next is Devi, can we know since when my system is up? Yes, absolutely. Let me show you. Hold on. Admin password. Oopsie, hold on. Close. Never. Dashboard status. So see over here, do you see this uptime? It says 58 minutes. So I mean, an hour back I powered this guy up, so it's been up from there. So a lot of your organization might have this maybe 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, or even more than that. Okay. So this is the base. Under the dashboard status system information, you'll get this information. Okay. Okay. Next is what is the FGFM service? FGFM is basically for your Forti manager. Okay, if you want to integrate your Fortigate Firewall with the Forti manager and you want to push every configuration from your Forti manager, then you have to enable the FGFM. Okay, all right. Why can't we access with the HTTPS? So the reason is we are having, first of all, is the evaluation license. First thing, evaluation license does not allow you to work with the HTTPS. Okay, so you cannot do deep scanning or all those things. Okay, first. Second is that if you want to enable the HTTPS, even if you have a licensed version, okay, and you are accessing through a public IP, you will get a certificate error, right? So you have to buy a certificate first for your FortiGate firewall, and once you have that FortiGate firewall certification, then you can access through the HTTPS. But with the evaluation, it is not possible. But if you have a licensed version, yes, you can do it. Ankur says how to create multiple Forti links. See, Forti links is just one interface. You cannot create more than that. It's a hardware which has been given to be used like that. So you cannot create more than. Yes, you can add interfaces to it, but can't have more than one. Okay, now the next is, can you repeat the role section? Okay, I'll come back to this. Explain device detection once more. Okay, Ankur. So can we apply different traffic shaping for different VLANs? Will that be going with packets flow will be without any? Yes, you can apply traffic shaping with different VLANs, because what will happen is once you create different VLANs, right? You need to create different interfaces or different VLAN IDs on the firewall also. Okay, so you can absolutely go ahead and apply the traffic shaping. There will not be packet loss. It is just that if you so it's just that I'm capping at 80 Mbps. So basically this means that the traffic If it is going above 80 Mbps, it will slow down a little bit, but there will be no packet loss as such. Yes, I mean, if the traffic is coming at a very huge speed, let's say, for example, if I'm not bottlenecking, what is bottlenecking? Meaning, let's say the communication or the traffic which is coming in, it's around 200 or 300 Mbps. I'm capping it at 80 Mbps. Of course, there will be packet loss. Okay, but let's say, for example, the speed is 100 Mbps. Your whole network is on 100 Mbps connections, all your Ethernet cables are on your 100 Mbps connections. And then if I'm capping at 80 or 90 Mbps, there will be no packet loss. You can expect a little slowness whenever you are hitting that amount, but no packet loss as such. But yes, there are always chances of having maybe 1% to 5% of packet loss. Okay. Again, rare situations, but yes. Do we need to have a separate license for different domain? Absolutely. So till 10 virtual domains, you do not have to have any licensing, but if you go above that, you need to have that. Okay. Can we set MTU on the interface? Absolutely, you can do that. Okay. There was two things which I had to follow, right? Role section and device detection. Okay. All right. So let's come on the network interfaces and take one of the interface again. See, the first is the low role. So if you select LAN, okay, it is just a way of telling your FortiGate firewall. See, I'll show you here. Settings which do not apply to the current role will be hidden. Okay, it doesn't say anything. So see, LAN basically gives you info. I mean, it will give you the settings which, from the FortiGate point of view, is a LAN setting, meaning some the manual configuration, DHCP configuration, administrative access, device detection, all these things. So you need this in a LAN setup as well. So that is why it will give you those settings. If I say WAN, it will give me an additional setting of bandwidth, which you will not find in the LAN. Why? Because in the bandwidth, I can cap it to certain number of upstream and downstream. Now, see, the only limitation is because I know there will be a question that if I'm doing capping over here, then what is this? The traffic shaping. See, what happens over here is you have to mention everything in the kbps. Over here, if you're doing the shaping, you can do in the mbps, you can do in the gbps. It's up to you. And then this is much more granular. You can do traffic shaping on the interface level as well. Okay, sorry, IP address level as well. All right, so this is much more granular. The role over here gives you just a basic understanding of how the setup would work for you. Okay, if you want to do a capping over here just only, then you can do that. So that is why this is a setting which is very specific to the WAN. Okay, not you will not find this in the LAN section. Go into the DMZ section. Okay, now in the DMZ section, you are also getting the same kind of information, nothing more, nothing less. Okay, so role basically, as per the FortiGate's point of view, what all options you should have and what all you should not have, that is what you get. Undefined, basically, you do not really know, so you can have whatever configuration that you want. So that is the role. So, but what happens in most of the cases and situations, I have not used this role because this doesn't really make much a difference to me, to be very honest. So I do not use it. I use the alias just to understand whether the port is a LAN port or a DMZ port or something like that. Now, device detection is, again, as I said, that if in case you have a couple of devices of Windows and Mac and Linux, okay, and those are directly connected to a L2 switch, and then that L2 switch is connected to my um, my port that I have, so port 3 or port 1, let's say, for example. Okay, then my FortiGate firewall has the capacity to check the traffic and understand that if this, whatever the traffic is coming in, is it a Windows traffic or is it a Linux traffic. This FortiGate firewall will be able to identify that, but only if you have a layer 2 switch in between. If you have a layer 3 switch, you cannot make it work. If you there's a document on device detection, so if you go through it, there is a prerequisite and it says that you need to have a layer 2 switch only, because with layer 2 switch, you would be the FortiGate firewall will be able to detect what kind of vendor the traffic is coming from. Is it Windows or Mac or Linux? Okay, but if it is a layer 3, FortiGate won't be able to identify. So this device detection is just like an additional feature. If you want to use, or if it can be used, you can, otherwise not. Okay. So Venkat says override internal DNS. Override internal DNS. Okay. So override internal DNS is basically, see over here, let me show you. Do you see this? 208.91. Okay. So over here, this is the DNS server which is being used by the FortiGuard server, but it is grayed out. Do you know why? Because I cannot make use of it. I can only use 1.1.1.1. Why? Because at the interface level, I am saying to override the DNS, internal DNS. Does it make sense now, Venkat? Okay. All right. Sure. All right, guys. So now let's do one thing. I'll conclude the session today over here, and we'll meet tomorrow, same time, and maybe let's meet up a little early, maybe 5-10 minutes early. Okay. So we'll discuss whatever you want to discuss about, and tomorrow we are going to talk about administrator profiles, configuration, backups, and restriction of your admin access to specific IP addresses and all that stuff. So we're going to cover all those things tomorrow. Okay, so people who have not yet configured the lab, the link which I've shared today, please go through it, take help from those video, and make sure that by tomorrow 6 o'clock you have your lab ready. Okay, so that's what we are going to do tomorrow. All right, so let's conclude the session, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.